The calm before the storm. For 15 years, humanity had enjoyed peace, something they had never known before. The galaxy, once divided by constant wars and struggles, had started to settle down. Earth, the planet that had once been just a tiny speck in the vast cosmos, had become a symbol of hope. It had proved to the galaxy that peace was possible, even among so many different species. But that peace came at a price, and for the longest time, humanity feared what would come next. The wars were in the past, but the scars still remained. Every person on Earth remembered the countless battles fought, the ships destroyed, and the lives lost. But the victory was clear. Earth had outlasted the wars. The human race had won, not with weapons or violence, but with intelligence and diplomacy. They had shown the galaxy that they could be trusted, that they were more than just conquerors, they were builders. The peace that followed was delicate, like a thread hanging in the wind. For years, the galaxy had watched humanity, wondering if they were truly capable of keeping it. Earth's leaders worked day and night, making sure that the alliances they had built stayed strong. There were challenges, of course, there always were, but they managed. They managed because they knew that peace was more precious than anything. And then, it came. It started as a whisper in the darkness, barely noticeable at first. Ships from different parts of the galaxy began to move, shifting positions. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable to the untrained eye. But to those who had been keeping watch, it was the first sign of something far worse coming. The peaceful silence that had settled over the galaxy was about to be shattered. Humanity had long ago learned that peace never lasted forever. They had prepared for this moment, but they hoped it would never come. Unfortunately, their worst fears were about to be realized. One morning, the news broke, out of nowhere, a fleet appeared. Massive warships, each one bigger and more powerful than any ship Earth had ever seen, suddenly emerged from the farthest reaches of space. They were not human. They were not part of any of the established alliances. They were unknown. The first ship to arrive was a dark behemoth, its surface covered in strange markings. The people of Earth watched in shock as it slowly moved toward the outer edges of their solar system. There was no communication, no warning. Just the ship, moving in silence. At first, they thought it was some kind of mistake, a rogue ship that had lost its way. But then more arrived. Dozens. Hundreds. Ships of all sizes and shapes. It was clear now that this was no accident. These were invaders, and they were here to destroy. The leaders of Earth scrambled to make contact, sending out every message they could. They tried to call for help from their allies, but it was no use. The invaders were too fast, too strong. Their ships blocked all communication, cutting off Earth from the rest of the galaxy. The invaders had a message, one that humanity never expected to hear: the peace you have built is an illusion. You have let your guard down. And now, you will pay the price. As the ships descended closer to Earth, the atmosphere grew tense. People everywhere began to fear the worst. No one knew who these invaders were or where they had come from, but one thing was clear: they had come to destroy everything that humanity had worked so hard to build. Earth's military forces were mobilized in an instant. Ships were readied for battle, weapons were armed, and defenses were put into place. But despite all their preparation, they were no match for the invaders' advanced technology. The peace that had lasted for 15 years was about to be broken, and the galaxy was about to witness the fall of Earth's greatest hope. The first battle came quickly. The invaders attacked without warning, their ships launching devastating beams of energy that cut through Earth's defenses like they were paper. Cities were destroyed in a matter of hours, and the people of Earth were thrown into chaos. The peace they had so carefully protected was shattered in an instant. The galaxy, once full of hope, now stood on the edge of war again. Humanity's greatest achievement, the peace they had earned, was gone, replaced by the harsh reality of war. As the battle raged on, Earth's leaders watched in disbelief. They had thought they were ready for anything, but this was beyond anything they could have imagined. The invaders were relentless, and their power was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. This was just the beginning, and no one knew how much worse it would get. What had started as a peaceful time for humanity was now a desperate fight for survival. Earth had been peaceful for so long, but now the storm had arrived, and no one could escape its fury. The war that ignited. The sky above Earth had once been calm, a vast expanse that held no fear. But now, it was filled with the dark silhouettes of ships that blocked out the stars. The invaders had arrived, and with them, the terror of an enemy unlike anything humanity had ever faced. No one knew where they came from or why they had attacked, but one thing was certain, Earth's peace was gone forever. The first wave of battle had left Earth reeling. The cities that had once thrived with life now lay in ruins, shattered by the invaders' unrelenting attacks. Humanity's advanced weapons had barely scratched the surface of the invaders' ships, their armor stronger than anything Earth had built. There was no time to recover, no time to rebuild. The fight for survival had already begun. As Earth's leaders scrambled to assemble a counteroffensive, the invaders showed no mercy. Their ships moved with precision, devastating everything in their path. But it wasn't just the power of their weapons that terrified humanity. It was the silence with which they operated. No demands. No negotiations. Just destruction. People on Earth watched in horror as the invaders broadcasted their message across the planet. This galaxy belongs to those who take it, and you, Earth, are nothing but a stepping stone. Your peace is a lie. The words echoed in the minds of every human who heard them, a reminder that the peace they had so carefully crafted was nothing but a fleeting illusion. The message was clear, humanity had been weak to believe in peace, and now they would suffer the consequences. The military's response was swift, but the invaders were prepared. In a matter of days, Earth's defenses crumbled. The world's greatest cities, the symbols of human progress, were reduced to ash. The human race had never known such a devastating assault, and as the fires burned across the surface of their home, there was only one question left: how could they survive? In the chaos, whispers began to spread. There were rumors of secret weapons, hidden technologies that humanity had kept for emergencies. The leaders of Earth, desperate and unwilling to surrender, decided to search for these weapons, hoping they could turn the tide of war. But the invaders were relentless. With every passing hour, their control over Earth's skies and cities grew stronger. Yet, even in the darkest moments, humanity's spirit was not fully broken. A group of survivors, led by former soldiers and engineers, began to work on something that no one expected, an answer to the invaders' seemingly unstoppable force. These brave men and women, against all odds, were determined to find a way to push back. The human resistance grew in strength as whispers of a secret weapon spread. They believed that humanity's greatest hope wasn't in more weapons or technology, it was in the very thing that had kept them alive for so long: unity. The unity that had brought them peace for 15 years. But now, they would need that unity to fight back and take back what was theirs. As the human resistance began to form, the invaders made a chilling move. They began to hunt down the survivors, knowing that the last hope of humanity rested in their hands. No one was safe, but the fire of rebellion burned brighter with each day that passed. In the midst of the conflict, a strange event occurred. A lone human fighter ship, with a small crew, managed to penetrate the invaders' defenses. They reached the edge of their fleet, where no one else dared to go, and discovered something incredible: a weakness. The invaders, with all their might, had overlooked one critical flaw in their strategy, a flaw that humans, with their ingenuity, had now uncovered. It was a chance, a small window of opportunity, but it was a chance nonetheless. The resistance had found a way to strike back. The invaders had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity, and now, the tide of war was about to turn. But the journey would not be easy. The war was far from over, and the path to victory would be fraught with danger and sacrifice. Every human who fought, every soldier who stood up, did so knowing that the survival of Earth was at stake. The battle was only beginning, and humanity's struggle to reclaim their peace was only just starting. They had lost so much already, but they had not lost everything. The fire of hope burned within them, and with that fire, they would fight until the very end. The resistance awakens. As Earth burned under the weight of the invaders' wrath, humanity's last hope lay in the hands of a small, determined group. They weren't soldiers by title, nor were they famous heroes. They were ordinary people, everyday workers, scientists, engineers, and former military personnel who had refused to give up when everything seemed lost. They had been the ones to see the cracks in the invaders' armor, to find the vulnerability that no one else could. In the shadow of the cities that had once stood as beacons of human achievement, they gathered in secret. Hidden in underground bunkers and abandoned facilities, these survivors worked tirelessly. They knew that time was running out, that the invaders' grip on Earth was tightening, but they also knew that if they could exploit the weakness they had uncovered, they might have a fighting chance. They didn't have the same advanced technology or weapons that the invaders possessed. They didn't have fleets of massive ships or the power to wipe out entire cities with a single command. What they had, though, was something more dangerous, a burning desire to fight for their world, for their families, for their future. Every day, they grew stronger. The resistance began to take form, each group of survivors working on a different aspect of the mission, some focused on rebuilding damaged technology, others on sabotaging the invaders' ships and supply lines. They were few in number, but they were united by one unshakable truth: Earth was their home, and they weren't going to let it fall without a fight. The first successful strike came from an unexpected place. A small team of engineers, led by an old war veteran named Marcus, managed to infiltrate one of the invaders' damaged ships. Using their knowledge of Earth's technology, they created a virus, a digital weapon designed to cripple the invaders' command systems. They launched the virus from a remote base, sending it deep into the heart of the alien fleet. The results were immediate. The invaders' ships began to malfunction, their once perfect coordination falling apart. The resistance had scored their first victory, and it was a victory that filled them with hope. News of the strike spread quickly among the survivors. The small victory turned into a symbol of something larger, the belief that the invaders weren't invincible. The resistance knew now that their enemy could be beaten, that their technology wasn't flawless. And they weren't going to stop until they had taken down the invaders for good. But the invaders weren't blind to their growing threat. They had expected resistance, of course, but they had never anticipated that humanity would fight back with such determination. In response to the virus attack, they intensified their efforts, launching an all-out assault on the resistance's hideouts. Cities and bases were destroyed in a brutal retaliation, and the survivors were forced to scatter, going deeper into hiding, but they had not been broken. As the resistance regrouped, they began to realize something crucial. While the invaders' ships were powerful, they had never expected the kind of guerrilla tactics humanity was now using. Earth's terrain, its dense cities and forests, its underground bunkers and old military sites, all provided the perfect cover for their small but skilled forces. The invaders had underestimated humanity's resourcefulness, and now they were paying the price. But despite these successes, the clock was ticking. The invaders were closing in on the final pieces of humanity's greatest weapon, a weapon that could end the war. It was a weapon not of destruction, but of hope. A device so powerful, it could reverse the damage caused by the invaders' attacks, restoring balance to the galaxy. The resistance had been working on it for months, piecing together what little technology had survived the initial onslaught. But they were still a long way from completing it, and with the invaders getting closer every day, the pressure was mounting. It was then that a new leader emerged. A young woman named Elena, once a scientist and now a symbol of humanity's will to survive. Elena was brilliant, resourceful, and unyielding in her determination to save her world. Her vision was clear: humanity had already proven its strength once before. Now, it was time to finish what they had started. With the resistance united under her leadership, they pushed forward, determined to bring the invaders to their knees. The final battle was drawing near. The invaders, desperate to secure their hold on Earth, began their last assault. They were closing in on the Resistance's main base, ready to end the war once and for all. But Elena and her team had one final card to play. Using the weapon they had been building, they initiated a daring attack that would strike at the heart of the invaders' fleet. With Earth's last hope in their hands, the resistance prepared for a final, desperate push. The war for Earth was not over. It had only just begun. The final countdown. The final stages of the war had arrived. Earth's once proud cities were nothing more than smoldering ruins, and the skies above were filled with the twisted wreckage of ships. Yet, through all the destruction, something incredible was happening. Humanity, battered and bruised, had refused to give up. The invaders had underestimated them, thinking that they could crush Earth's spirit. They had failed to account for one thing, the resilience of the human heart. Elena stood before a massive holographic map, her eyes focused on the swirling mass of enemy ships that surrounded Earth. The invaders were closing in on the last stronghold of humanity's resistance, a hidden base deep beneath the surface of what was once New York. The weapon they had been working on for months, the key to turning the tide of the war, was almost ready, but not quite. Time was running out. "Ready the teams," Elena said, her voice calm despite the chaos outside. "This is it. We either win or we lose everything." Her words were met with nods of determination. The team had prepared for this moment, and now there was no turning back. The weapon, a colossal device designed to disrupt the invaders' fleet from within, had taken longer to build than they had hoped, but it was finally operational. The stakes could not have been higher. If they failed now, Earth would fall, and the galaxy would know nothing but tyranny. As the final countdown began, the ground shook beneath them. The invaders were relentless, pressing in with everything they had. They had learned from their earlier mistakes, and this time, they wouldn't underestimate humanity's tenacity. Their ships filled the skies, blotting out the stars. It was a display of power so overwhelming, it seemed like the end was inevitable. But Elena and her team had one last trick to play. The weapon they had built was unlike anything the invaders had encountered. It wasn't designed for destruction, it was designed to undo their greatest strength. The invaders had relied on a network of advanced systems that connected all their ships, creating a near-invincible command structure. The weapon, however, would disrupt this network, severing the invaders' ability to communicate and coordinate. It was a gamble, but it was their only chance. The plan was simple: deploy the weapon deep into the heart of the invaders' fleet, close enough to create a chain reaction. A single shot from the weapon, and the invaders' fleet would be thrown into disarray. They would be vulnerable. And in that moment, humanity would strike. But there was a problem. The weapon wasn't a perfect tool, it required a human operator to guide it to its target, and the only person capable of doing so was Elena herself. She had never intended to be the one to wield it, but there was no one else left. The resistance needed her. Earth needed her. There was no time for hesitation. Elena took a deep breath and stepped into the cockpit of the ship that would carry the weapon to its destination. She knew the risks, there was no guarantee the weapon would work, and even if it did, there was no guarantee she would make it back. But she wasn't afraid. She had seen the destruction, felt the loss, and tasted the bitterness of defeat. But she had also seen the spark of hope that refused to die. She was humanity's last chance. "Activate the countdown," she ordered, her voice steady as the final seconds ticked away. As the countdown reached 0, the ship, carrying the weapon, shot through the atmosphere, breaking through the clouds and into the vast expanse of space. The resistance held its breath, watching the screens as Elena's ship approached the heart of the invaders' fleet. Everything had led to this moment. The weapon had to work. It had to. Elena's heart raced as the enemy ships grew larger in her view, their weapons aimed directly at her. She could almost hear the hum of their powerful energy weapons charging. But she pressed forward. She couldn't stop now. She had come too far. The invaders would not win. Not today. With one final push, she locked the weapon into position, targeting the center of the invaders' network. The weapon hummed to life, its power surging through the ship. Elena's eyes narrowed in determination. "This is for Earth," she whispered. She pressed the button. A massive surge of energy shot from the weapon, creating a ripple through the fabric of space itself. The invaders' ships faltered, their once perfect coordination breaking apart. Their weapons misfired, their ships drifting out of control. For the first time since the invasion began, the invaders were vulnerable. Back on Earth, the Resistance saw their chance. The fleets of humanity's allies, who had been hiding in the shadows, now moved into position. They had been waiting for this moment, and now, they would strike with everything they had. The battle was far from over, but the invaders' dominance had been shattered. Their fleet was in chaos, and the people of Earth had found their courage once again. Elena had done it. The tide had turned. But the fight was not over. Earth would rise, but it would take everything humanity had left to defeat the invaders once and for all. Elena's victory had sparked the hope they needed, but the war for Earth was far from over. The final chapter of this conflict had only just begun. The dawn of victory. The galaxy had never seen anything like this. What began as an invasion that seemed impossible to overcome, had now turned into the last stand of the human race. Earth's survivors, led by the courage of those like Elena, had turned the tide in a way no one could have predicted. But even with the invaders' fleet in disarray, the final battle had not yet been won. The invaders, though momentarily crippled by the weapon, were not finished. Their leaders, cold and calculating, quickly regrouped. They rallied their scattered forces, refocusing their assault on Earth's remaining defenses. The galaxy's most powerful army had been rattled, but not broken. Elena's ship had crashed into the outskirts of the battlefield, its mission completed, but the devastation was far from over. Her face, pale and battered, reflected the intensity of the conflict she had just survived. The weapon had worked, but at a cost. The invaders were regrouping, and Earth's resistance was running out of time. From the wreckage of her ship, Elena radioed in, her voice a steady whisper through the chaos. "We've done it. They're weakened, but they're not gone," she said, her words carrying through the static. "We have one last chance. We need to finish this, now. Gather every fighter, every ship we have left. Earth's future depends on it." The message was sent, and humanity responded. All around Earth, the last remnants of resistance began to assemble. From the ruins of cities, from the depths of underground bunkers, from hidden military outposts long abandoned, the fighters came together. What was once a fractured force now united under one banner, the survival of Earth. The battle that followed was nothing short of legendary. The remaining invader ships, though disorganized and vulnerable, launched a final assault on Earth's core. They struck at the heart of humanity's remaining strongholds, hoping to crush the last flickers of hope. But humanity fought back with every ounce of strength left in them. The human fighters, fueled by the loss of their homes and the memories of the lives taken, fought like nothing they had before. The resistance was relentless, their tactics now honed by months of survival and hardship. They didn't have the advanced technology of their enemies, but they had something far more powerful, the will to protect their world, their families, their future. The final confrontation took place in Earth's orbit, among the debris of the broken invader ships. The remaining human fleets, now united, launched a counterattack. They hit the invaders with a series of surprise strikes, each one a precise blow to their fragile coordination. The invader ships, already damaged, began to fall apart under the pressure. And then, the unthinkable happened. Humanity's greatest weapon, the one they had been hiding for years, was activated. The weapon was not just a tool of destruction, it was a message, a signal to every corner of the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The blast from the weapon was unlike anything the invaders had ever seen. It cut through the invader fleet with the force of 1,000 storms, breaking their ships apart and sending the invaders fleeing into the void. The battle was over. The sky above Earth, once filled with smoke and fire, began to clear. For the first time in years, the stars above shone bright and clear, undisturbed by the shadow of war. Humanity had won. But victory came at a cost. Earth was battered, its cities in ruins, and many lives had been lost. The scars of war would remain, but humanity had proven something far more important. They had shown that no force in the galaxy could extinguish their spirit. As the dust settled, Elena, who had survived against all odds, stood with her fellow resistance fighters. They looked out over the world they had saved, their home. The invaders were gone, but the work to rebuild had only just begun. The planet, wounded but resilient, would rise again. And with it, humanity. In the quiet aftermath, Elena gazed up at the stars, a sense of peace settling over her. She knew the battle was won, but the future was unwritten. The peace that humanity had fought for, so fiercely, was no longer a dream. It was a reality. They had survived, and they would rebuild. They had shown the galaxy that Earth was more than just a place, it was a symbol. A symbol of strength, of hope, and of the unyielding will to fight for a better tomorrow. The galaxy had witnessed the rise of humanity. And it would never forget.